Teddy Roosevelt had a sacred account. There's a reason why I have Teddy Roosevelt up here. Teddy Roosevelt, I believe, the values and the character of that guy, amazing and incredible. But he had a sacred account with New York Life Insurance. He had the equivalent in today's dollars of $1 million in his sacred account. Teddy Roosevelt, in my opinion, is one of the greatest presidents we've ever had, right? So if Teddy did it, why aren't you doing it? This was back in like the 1900s too. Like we didn't have social media. Teddy found out about it and did it. Right? Walt Disney did it. Ray Kroc did it. Joe Biden has 6 of them. Guys, if Joe Biden is even doing it, okay, I watched today on a video, the man said that the president of Ukraine was Vladimir Putin. He called his vice president Donald Trump. If this individual has 6 of them and you don't, I'm just going to leave it at that. Like, we're not going to talk more about this. I'm going to let you assume what I think about you right now and just let that sit for a minute, okay? So guys, really quick, I want to give you an introduction to myself. My name is Jerry Fetta. I'm the CEO and the founder of a company called Wealth Dynamics. And my mission and my vision in life is I want to see that the majority of wealth is controlled by good people who use that wealth to make the world a better place, right? And so my mission on a day-to-day basis, my company, everything we do is about helping good people build more wealth who then in turn use that wealth to make the world a better place. And I want to talk to you about one of the tools that we use to do that, right? It's called the sacred account. Now, if you've not heard of the sacred account, it is a form of life insurance. Show me some feedback, likes, angry faces, whatever, if you have heard of the idea of using life insurance as your own banking system, right? I want to see that here in the comments, and comment below if you own a sacred account, by the way, but it's a form of life insurance. Now, before we get into it, I want to handle you on the topic of life insurance. Right? So show me some likes if you have heard life insurance is a scam. If you have heard cash value life insurance is a bad idea, or never mix saving and investing with life insurance. If you've heard any of those things, I want to see some likes. I want to see some hearts or some angry faces, whatever emoji you feel like using. Okay? So I want to share with you guys, I've heard that too. In fact, I was working with Dave Ramsey. If you guys don't know Dave Ramsey, he's probably the #1 radio personality on the topic of finances on the planet, and he is 100% anti whole life insurance. So I was working with Dave Ramsey for several years in about 8 different states as what's called an endorsed local provider. That meant that I was somebody who, when his listeners would hear his show, he would send them to people like me to go help out with investing. And one of the rules that we had agreed to was that we would never sell whole life insurance. Right? In order to help Dave Ramsey's audience in public, we had to agree we would never sell any form of whole life insurance or cash value life insurance. So that would be any kind of life insurance that has a savings component. So I started in the financial services industry at the age of 18, working at a company that didn't do the whole life insurance and the cash value life insurance either. So as you can imagine, if I transitioned from that to then working with Dave Ramsey, who is also 100% anti-whole life insurance, it would be a little bit weird for me to be using whole life insurance myself, right? But the fact is I own 6 of these whole life insurance policies now. I'm going to be setting up number 7 and number 8 for myself this year, right? My 13-year-old son has one. My wife has one. I've got hundreds of clients across the country that have one, right? And I want to share with you, why is it that I went from a Dave Ramsey disciple, whole life insurance, cash value life insurance, it's the devil, it's a scam, never use it, to making it probably the #1 place that I put my money today. Okay, because I'm not an idiot when it comes to finances. So either I'm the dumbest person you've ever met, or there's something that isn't being said about whole life insurance. Right now, a little bit about my background really quick. Like I mentioned, I've been in the financial services industry since the age of 18. I'm now 32 years old. I built a multi-7-figure company. We've done 7 figures a year, multiple years in a row. We've helped thousands of clients across the country with their finances. I've published 5 or 6 books. I've been featured as a Forbes Financial Council member. I've worked with Dave Ramsey. I've been endorsed by Grant Cardone. I've worked with Pamela Yellen with Bank on Yourself. I work with the Infinite Banking Concept with the Money Multiplier team and Nelson Nash and that group as well. Last year, Inc. 5000, they gave us the award for me being, I'm looking at it on my wall right now, a top 100 fastest growing financial firm in the country, right? Awesome. That's not why I do what I do. I'm just focused on helping people, right? How do I help more people? Now, I've done thousands of videos, I've written hundreds of articles, And many of them have been on the topic of educating people on how to become their own banker, right? Now, to really dive into this concept, there's something you need to understand. It's called the banking quadrant. I want to share my screen and I want to show this to you because what is happening with the average person, the average American or non-American even, is we trade time for money, right? We trade time for money. And because we trade time for money, we have this thing of we either have time or money or neither, but we never have both of them, right? So I've been in the position where I had lots of time and no money. When I was a kid, you guys, a little kid, right? I have time and no money, right? I'm not really earning anything, okay? So that's typical. The other thing then is, okay, well, I've also been in a position where I had money, but I had no time, right? I was working so hard to earn that I wasn't actually able to enjoy the very thing I was working so hard for, right? Show me some hearts or some likes if you've ever felt that one, right? And then the other thing is I've been in positions where I had both, where I was like, man, no matter how hard I work, I'm using the time and I also don't feel like I've got any money. Hey, you want to see a magic trick? Get a copy of my book, Blueprint to Financial Freedom. I know it's in front of my chest and my face because I want you focusing on the book and not me for a moment before you go back to focusing on me and the content. Okay, now, amongst all of this, there's a couple rules we need to follow, and one of those rules is pay yourself first. I had two people I spoke to about this week, specifically the subject of pay yourself first. The first one was a friend of mine that does not have a sacred account. She doesn't. She knows how to earn good income. She's been an entrepreneur for many years. She's one of the more brilliant people I know, very high energy, and she doesn't have a sacred account. So when I mentioned to her and I was like, hey, so I see what you've got going on financially and I get it. And this is what you need to do to help. And I said, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to pay yourself first. She didn't know what that meant. She was like, well, I do. I take a salary from my business every month, right? I do pay myself first, right? And it made me realize that most people don't know what pay yourself first means, right? It doesn't mean get a paycheck because then you're like, okay, if I have a job, I'm naturally paying myself first already. Okay, pay yourself first means that when you get paid, you take a percentage of your income and that goes into a separate account, right? A separate account, you sweep it aside and you're paying yourself first. Yourself meaning your future, your wealth. You are saving at the beginning instead of saving what is left over. Okay, so that is the first thing I want to go over today is we're going to dive into the mechanics of the sacred account. We're going to dive into some really good stuff about it. But if you're not paying yourself first, this concept will not work for you, right? The average American doesn't pay themselves first. They either do save what's left over at the end of the month, right? I pay all my bills, I pay everyone else first, and whatever's left, if there's anything, then I'm gonna pay myself first. But it's last, not first, right? Or they pay someone else first and they think it's themselves, right? What is the definition of the word yourself? Think about this. What does yourself mean? That would mean you as an individual. So you pay you as an individual first. Okay. Now I'm picking on this one because the average person puts money in a retirement account thinking that that means they're paying themselves first. Okay. Think about when you put money in a retirement account, who really has control of the money? Because what I know is when I pay myself first, I have control of the money. I get to use the money. I make the decisions, right? When I put myself in a position where I'm putting the money in a retirement account first, I am not paying myself first. I'm actually paying Wall Street first. Wall Street gets control of my money and access to my money and gets paid on my money for the next 20, 30, 40 years. I don't get to use the money. It's not me. I didn't pay myself first. I paid them first. Right? Not only that, when I withdraw the money at the end, they already got paid. The IRS now gets paid. I get the leftovers with that system. The other thing people do is they'll put money in a bank account and they think that that means paying themselves first. And I want to share this with you. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen and I want to show you exactly what happens when we put our money in a bank. Okay. So this is called the banking quadrant. And I've gone over this before, but a bank, and this is how all banks work. No exceptions. There's no special ones here that don't have this. The banking quadrant, it goes like this. We've got this quadrant, right? And so first things first is we are depositors. We're putting money in the bank. right? We're depositors in the banking system. Now, a depositor has a job. Their job is to put their income in the bank. And so we put our income in the bank, and some of us think that means we're paying ourselves first. The problem is when we put our income and our deposits in the bank, there's another party in this game, another player called the bank or the banker. The banker's job, what they do is they borrow against your deposits. Okay? You put the money in, you think it's there being held in safety for you and it's going to be ready when you come back. No. They're using it. Okay, so again, pay myself first. When I pay myself first, who gets to use the money? I do. Who gets to control the money? I do. Who's in charge? Me. So if you put your money into a bank account where you can't use it, they're going to use it instead. They're the ones literally controlling and directing it. Did you really pay yourself first? No, you didn't. You paid the bank first, right? So you paid the bank first. The bank is borrowing against your deposit. They're loaning that out to other people who are borrowers, and those people are taking your money from the bank to buy a car, and they're going to pay the bank back with principal and interest. The bank is going to make about 1,400% more on your money than they pay you. What do you make on your savings account or your checking account? Like 0.5%, maybe 1%, right? You're like, oh great, I'm in a high yield account, I get 4%. The bank is making 14 times more than you. So if they're paying you 5%, how much do you think they're making? Okay, Bauer Financial is where that stat comes from. You can fact check me, you can Google that. That is on average how much more banks make on your deposits than you, because it makes sense. They can't stay in business if they're paying you a big chunk of the profits and they're not making much. They need to pay you as little as possible to make as much as possible so that they can stay in business. There's a reason why in every big city in America, if you look at the city line, the biggest buildings belong to banks. That's just the way it is. Right? Now, you've also got shareholders in this system. There's people that own the bank. They make money on dividends. Dividends are a share of profits that the bank earns on an annual basis, on a quarterly basis, whatever it would be. And then they share those profits back with the shareholders, the investors that own the bank. What's my point here? For you to truly be paying yourself first, you need to direct money as soon as you get it, a percentage of the money you get as soon as you get it, into an account that you own, that you maintain control over, that you're the boss of, that you get to use. And the bank and the retirement account are automatically disqualified from that definition because you don't get to control it. You're not the boss. You don't get to use it. You don't get to benefit from it. They do. See what I mean there? So what do we do from here? This is how I discovered the sacred account. Okay, show me a like if you have heard wealthy people invest in real estate. Right? This is literally what I went through. I was like, okay, I understand wealthy people invest in real estate. Okay, so I was like, I want to invest in real estate. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that. I didn't know that yet. I was like, well, I've got people who are buying a fourplex and living in one of the units and renting the other 3 out, and they're investing in real estate. I know people buying duplexes. I know people buying apartment buildings. I know people buying warehouses and storage units and office complexes, and they're running it, and it takes a lot of their time and attention, but they're investing in real estate, right? That's a different conversation for a different time on the level of involvement you want with your real estate investing. But I knew that I needed to do some form of real estate investing. Now, as I started looking at it, I started to realize, wow, I can't do real estate investing with $1,000. I can't do real estate investing with $50 a month. I have to have 50, 20, 100,000, maybe more to invest in real estate. And I started to realize the better the real estate was, the more I needed to invest. And I started to see that I basically needed somewhere between 50 and about 150,000 to really invest in real estate the way that I want to, where it doesn't take a lot of my time and attention and it's very, very passive. I need at least 50 to maybe 150,000 to start doing that. So there I was growing my income, I was working, I was doing all this stuff. And meanwhile, I was putting all my money in a bank, right? And at this time I knew this system. I knew that the banks borrowed against my deposits. I absolutely knew that, but I was like, where else do you put the money? So I don't like putting it in a bank, but I also don't want to give it to Wall Street because I know that's not a good idea. So where are wealthy people putting their money? It doesn't make any sense. So I started to research. Right? I started to research. Now, I'm not a genius. I did basic common sense. I was like, okay, good. So I want to be wealthy. Who are some of the wealthiest people that I can think of? So I thought of all the wealthy ones. Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, Charlie Munger, Bill Gates, Sam Walton, John Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, JP Morgan. I started thinking of all these people. I was like, okay, cool. So what if I were to study them? And then I was like, wait a second. Some of them aren't dead yet. They're still alive. What if they lose all their money? What if I copy them and then all of a sudden they mess up and they lose everything, and because I copied them, I make the same mistakes. So I was like, okay, I don't want to study anyone that's still living. I only want to study wealthy, dead people. That was it. Wealthy, dead people. Because why? I can look at from start to finish. I can see the whole shebang and see, okay, they made it to their goal. They got the end result. They died, story's done. There's no way they're going to lose it. There's no way they're going to mess up. And I can see the full picture. So I started studying only wealthy dead people. I read the biographies of people like John D. Rockefeller, like JP Morgan, right? Like Andrew Carnegie, like Sam Walton, Teddy Roosevelt, some of these different people that are old historic figures that I was like, okay, I know for a fact they had money. I know for a fact they build wealth. The Vanderbilts, for example, right? Now, as I started doing this, I started noticing a trend. A lot of them started getting involved in banking, like owning banks. Not like, let me put money in a bank. They were owning banks. They were purchasing banks. They were opening banks. They were partners in banks. They were doing business as a bank, right? And I was like, that's weird. So I started to research banking, right? And I knew this whole thing. I knew exactly what I showed you here with the banking quadrant, right? I knew exactly all of this. I was like, okay, I already know when I put money in a bank, they're borrowing against it, they're loaning it out, they're investing it, they're paying me next to nothing, they're getting rich off of me, the shareholders make money, the bankers make money, shoot, even the borrowers can make money off my money, everyone wins but me, the depositor. I don't like that system, but why are they all involved in it? Okay, so I started researching banks, and guess what I started to learn? I started to learn that banks have something called Tier 1 capital. Tier 1 capital. You can Google this, but Tier 1 capital are the most prized reserves and savings that a bank has. They have to maintain certain ratios of Tier 1 capital. They're regulated by the government to have a certain amount of money in this section of their savings and their balance sheet called Tier 1 capital. I was like, that's interesting. I wonder what they put it in, right? And so I started to research and I started to see they're putting it in life insurance. Right? And at this point, it stopped me in my tracks because I hadn't yet decided or realized that I had been looking at whole life insurance the wrong way. So it stopped me in my tracks. I was like, there's no way. That makes zero sense, right? I've heard about this. It's a terrible thing to put money in. Dave Ramsey said so. Suze Orman said so. All of these people online tell me to, right? They say it's a bad idea. And so if I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it and saying, okay, this is not something I want to do, but I can't help but continue to look because I see, for example, Bank of America has over $20 billion in life insurance cash value. I see that the largest banks in the world have upwards of like $200 billion in cash in life insurance cash value. Right? Largest banks in the country. They're the number one owner and the number one purchaser of whole life insurance. Not term insurance, not index life insurance, not IUL, whole life insurance. So I start looking a little further because I'm like, okay, basically I put the money in, they borrow against my money, they put that out for loans and investments, they make profits, they take the profits and they pay themselves first into whole life insurance. Right? Again, not a genius. I grew up in Alaska, 62 kids in my graduating class, but I was like, so what do I need them for? Like if they're already doing this, what if I just cut them out as the middleman and I start putting my money in the life insurance myself? If they're already doing it, now granted I didn't understand it yet, but I was like, what about this concept? I need to learn more about this, right? So I start researching and it didn't really hit me till I got my hands on a real illustration of a real properly designed life insurance policy that I could do this with. And it flew in the face of everything I learned. I was taught when you put money in whole life insurance, you've got $0 in your cash value for the first 3 years. I looked at it, 70 to 90% of my money was available the first month. As soon as I opened the policy, I was like, that's impossible. I was told the average rate of return on this thing is about 0.5%, and I'm lucky to get 1 to 3% at best. And I started looking at this thing and I was like, this thing makes way more. It makes 3 to 5% tax free. right? I was told, well, when you open up a life insurance policy, you've got to borrow against your own money, and that's a bad idea. And then I realized that this is exactly what Apple does over in Ireland. Apple has their headquarters in a tax haven in Ireland, and they keep it there so they don't have to pay the taxes, and they issue loans to their US-based corporations to access and use that money tax-free, right? So I was looking at this, I was like, loans aren't taxable. Then I started looking at this whole life insurance thing differently. I would want to borrow my money because I own the insurance company I'm paying the loan interest to. I'm an owner, they pay me, I'm the shareholder now. I get to be all four people in the banking quadrant: the depositor, the banker, the borrower, and the shareholder. All of those are me. So when I borrow against my money, it still grows while I use it. Just like the bank does, they borrow against my deposit. Someone's already borrowing against my deposit. Why not make it me instead of them, right? Now, when they loan it out, they're investing it, they're making money. I can do the same thing. Then I pay myself back, I make profits. And when I make profits, I'm a shareholder as well because I get paid dividends by the whole life insurance company. This whole concept started to make sense for me, and it clicked. It clicked. So I set up my first policy. I started using it, right? And I want to share with you, that was my backstory. Now I want to talk to you about what you should be doing. Next, I don't want to interrupt you too long. I just want to give you a free offer for my book, The Blueprint to Financial Freedom. If you go to jerryfetta.com/B2F promo, you can get the book now. I'm going to let you get back to the video, because you might be watching this, you might already have a sacred account. Now, let me share with you why it's called a sacred account, right? So, the literal type of design of whole life insurance is called high early cash value dividend paying whole life insurance. I don't want to say that every time, so I had to come up with a shorter name. That's literally it. So I call it the sacred account, right? Now, I used to work with Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone talked about how the wealthy store their money in sacred accounts, and I was like, well, what are these sacred accounts he's talking about? Because it can't be a bank account, can't be a 401k. When I learned about this, I was like, I want to call this one the sacred account. Now, here's my thing. My company, what we do is our focus is to create a growing network of benevolent bankers. What does benevolent mean? Benevolent means that you're charitable, you're generous, you care about the world around you, you've got good intentions, right? Because when I first learned this, all I was thinking about at a young age, my mid-20s, was, wow, I could make so much money doing this, right? And I'm ashamed to say, I did some loans, I took a loan against my policy, and I loaned the money to someone else, and I ripped them a new one with the interest, because I was like, well, that's what banks do. Right? The bank's going to charge them 20% on a credit card. I might as well do the same thing. I was doing the very thing to other people that I didn't like having happen to me by the banks. I was no better than them. I joined them in their game, and I was all of a sudden doing the same things that they do that I didn't want done to myself. But because I was like, well, I have a banking system now, and it's something that I'm going to use, right? I'm going to start taking advantage of other people the way that I take advantage of me, or I was taken advantage of by the banks. I'm going to do it to them now. Okay, I missed the entire point. We don't need more banks who take advantage of people. We don't need more people overpaying on interest so that they stay poor and they have no chance at ever building wealth. We need benevolent bankers. Imagine if banks were kind. Imagine if they actually cared. Imagine if they had more intentions than just making as much money as possible with the least amount of work, if none. Imagine a world like that, right? I don't think we would have a credit card that charged you 20% interest or 30% interest when you borrow. I don't think you'd have 9%, 10% interest rates on a car loan. I don't think people would have their homes repoed. Their homes, you said their cars repoed, their homes foreclosed on. I think the world would look a lot different, right? So when I started doing this, I didn't have the concept of a benevolent banker. Okay, now what does this word benevolent mean? It means that you wish well on the world around you. And it actually comes down to the word well, right? And it comes down to the origin of that word to wish. To wish. Okay? So you have a better wish for society. Now, the sacred account is something that you're using because as a benevolent banker, you would be on a sacred mission. You have a sacred mission of, I'm going to use this banking system to make the world a better place, to make my loved ones' lives a better place, to make my life a better place, to make the world around me a better place. All of that would be improved because you're a benevolent banker. Right? So it flows together. You're a benevolent banker using a sacred account. Right? So my focus with our company, we're growing and creating a network of benevolent bankers who can think for themselves financially. Right? You can think for yourselves financially. Okay, so this means that you can't just, and this is one of the things I've run into, guys. When you set up a sacred account, I'm gonna just whiteboard this out really quick. Okay, because I've been doing a lot of one-on-one calls with clients of mine recently that have sacred accounts, and there's something I see that keeps on getting missed, right? So people are, I'm interested in the sacred account, so they do step one of they set up a sacred account. We're just gonna say SA, right? They set up the sacred account. Okay, now we have a whole course on this. I'm not gonna dive into the ins and outs of how you set one of these up right now, but I am gonna go over the fact that you'd start there. You'd set up a sacred account. The second thing here is you would then fund your sacred account. You have to at least be the depositor, right? You're not gonna be able to okay, I'm gonna be the depositor with someone else's bank, but now all of a sudden when it's mine, I don't want to, right? Like I've talked to a couple people where they're like, how do I stop putting money in, or when can I stop putting money in? When have you ever asked yourself that question about someone else's bank? Right? I don't mean to be rude, but or make you feel dumb, but why would you be like, I've never heard someone, when can I stop putting money in my 401k? When can I stop saving money in my checking account or my savings account? I've never been asked that question by someone. But all of a sudden, now that you get to be your own banker, you're like, what's the least I can put in? When can I stop? Like these are some of the questions I get asked. You want to put in as much money as possible, and you wouldn't ever stop saving. If you're going to save, put it in your bank, not someone else's. Right? And I know I get that. I know. No. If you're asking the question, how do I put less money in, or when can I stop? You are severely misinformed on the concept of a sacred account. You're not actually taking on the role of being your own banker. If you actually owned a bank, would you want your depositors when can we stop putting money in? The only reason the banking system works is because people put money in. Yours will stop working as well if you quit putting money in. So you want to continue putting money into your banking system. So you fund your sacred account. The third thing you would do is you need to actually take loans against your cash value. Your cash value is the money that gets stored in the savings component of the life insurance policy. You're the banker. So when you borrow money, it keeps growing. That's one factor because you're also the depositor, right? As a banker, in real life, a banker doesn't say, well, when I borrow, the depositors keep making money and that's good for me, because the banker is not also the depositor. This is special. You get to be both. The banker doesn't get to in real life. So there's no concept of I'm going to borrow at this percent and I'm earning this percent on my cash value or on my savings account, because in real life, the banker doesn't get to make the money on the savings account. That's their cost. That's what they're paying someone else, right? So what is the banker's focus? I'm borrowing at this rate and I need to either invest or loan the money out and earn a higher rate. That is where the bank makes its profit. That and that alone. So you need to take loans and then you need to earn more than your cost to borrow. That's your interest. When you borrow against a life insurance policy, you will pay interest. You will not pay it to yourself. Despite what anyone says, you will pay the interest. It will go to the insurance company, not you. Now, you're an owner in the insurance company. So it's like you will buy gas. Do you want to buy it from your station and actually get some of the money back and profits? Or do you want to buy it from your competitor because you're like, well, I don't want to pay interest on my own station. That doesn't make sense. I don't want to pay interest on my own bank. That doesn't make sense. Let me pay to someone else's bank instead. Let me buy gas over there instead. I own a gym. I don't want to pay for my own membership. That doesn't make sense. Let me either steal it or I'm going to go to someone else's gym, right? No, you're a customer of your own bank. You own the bank. You're the depositor. You're the banker. Guess what? You're also the borrower. So you need to earn more than your cost to borrow. So you loan the money out against your cash value. You're going to use it for a couple of things. Number one is you're going to pay off debt, right? Debt is money and interest you are paying to someone else's banking system, not your own. So you would pay off your debt. Number two, you would self-finance large purchases, right? So you're going to buy a car. Now, this is something people don't get. They're like, why would I pay cash? Okay. I want you to realize you pay interest on every dollar, no matter what you decide to do with it. Okay. So you get money You've got a couple options. Okay, so I can get a loan from another bank to buy the car. Are you going to pay interest from that? Yes, you are. You're going to pay interest to them to borrow their money so that you get to keep your cash and savings. Okay, so we've established you pay interest there. Good. I'm going to earn money and I'm going to stick it in a savings account so that it's there, right? And I'm not even going to buy the car because I want to save my money. Good. You're going to pay interest in the form of inflation. Inflation will cost you every single year. It will erode the purchasing power of your money. You will pay that. Okay, so that's an established cost. Okay, good. Number 3, I'm going to pay cash. Okay, I'm going to buy the car with cash. I'm going to pay cash. That way it's not sitting in the bank. I'm not borrowing from someone else. Well, good. When you buy a car with cash, you lose out on something called opportunity cost. Opportunity cost means what could you have done if that money was still growing? You lose out on that. That's the future value of that money. So by buying a car with cash, you are not growing the money anymore. A car actually goes down in value. So you're going to lose like half the value in the next 3 to 5 years. Great way to take 50 grand and turn it into 25 if that's what you're trying to go for, right? But you're losing the future growth. So every decision you make with your dollar is going to cost you unless you put it here. I put it in my cash value in my sacred account. It still grows while I use it. Therefore, I've locked in the future value of that money. I borrow against it and I pay interest, which I was going to pay on one of these 3 options anyways, but the interest goes back to a system that I own and benefit from. You see what I changed there? Really just one thing, which is where I put my money. Instead of putting it in the bank or Wall Street, I'm putting it in the sacred account instead. I'm just changing the one thing there. Okay, but I self-finance a car with it. I do this with my own car. Borrow the money out, buy the car with the money from my policy. I make a payment back every month, the car payment back to my life insurance policy. The money that I borrowed still grows. I drive the car. I pay a principal and interest payment to my banking system just like I would have done with someone else's bank. My cash value grows and I get to basically drive for free. Right? I got a paid off car. I've got a loan back to myself. My cash value is still building. I'm still repaying the loan, which just replenishes the money I took out in the first place. You see that? That's much better. Third thing we can do, we can invest, right? So I can borrow from my cash value and I can put that in whatever I want to. Now, here's where people get confused. They're like, well, 3 to 5% is not very much, and I could put it in real estate or I could put it in the stock market, and that's going to be more. Okay, you're not doing one or the other. Like this is the thing that we're not used to. We're not used to having our cake and eating it too. You guys have heard that phrase? Okay, show me a like if you've heard that phrase. Good, so having my cake and eating it too. My response to that question is, what's the point of having cake if you're not going to eat it? Doesn't make any sense. Why would I have cake if I'm not going to eat it? Like I just want to look at the cake? Right? It doesn't make any sense. I hate that phrase. So you're going to have your cake and you're going to eat it too. It's like I had a friend of mine, he was talking about this. He's like, okay, good. So you're going to buy a brand new car and then you're just going to park it in the garage and never drive it for 20, 30 years, right? Because, oh, it's going to be so nice to drive finally in the future. No, it's going to be old and outdated. It's not going to, like people are going to be, what is that? Right? Or I'm going to go to a restaurant and order a really nice dinner. Then I'm going to store it in a to-go box and put it in my fridge until I turn 60 so that I can have the steak then. So that way I've got more steak to have later, right? You would never do that with food, with cars. You would never buy a house and be like, okay, I bought a house and now I'm not going to live in it, right? It doesn't make sense. You would never buy a house not to live in it. You would never buy food not to eat it. You would never buy a car not to drive it. So why would you put your money in something if you weren't going to use it? Money would be no different. Why would we change it all of a sudden just because it's money? So when you put your money in the sacred account, yes, it only grows at 3 to 5%, but that's because you're going to borrow and use it for the real estate or the stocks or the whatever anyways, and you're going to earn both. I earn 12% on my real estate plus 3 to 5% on my sacred account. That's a no-brainer. That's a complete no-brainer. Why would I ever do anything else? Right? Oh, cool. I'm going to just do the real estate. I just want my 12. I only want my 12%. I don't need the extra 3 to 5. They can keep that, right? Nobody in their right mind would do that unless they didn't understand the system. So when you borrow from the account, you do something like I've done where you invest in real estate. The cash flow from the real estate, here's where I'm different. You're going to take half of that. You're going to pay your loan back with it. You get to keep the other half. Okay, because I said we're creating a growing network of benevolent bankers who can think for themselves financially and are creating wealthier lives with their loved ones. Like they're actually like making life better today. They're creating wealthier lives with their loved ones and in the world around them. Now, not later, now. They're creating wealthier lives now. So why would I do all this stuff and I borrow and I get the passive income and I do the real estate just to take all of it and put it in my account and then be like, I have the house, but I'm not going to live in it. I have the food, but I'm not going to eat it. I have the car, but I'm not going to drive it. Okay? Half of it goes to your account. You get to keep the other half. That's the game. Your standard of living and your quality of life goes up immediately because you invested. Not when you're 60, not when you're 70, not when you're 50. Now, this month, because you have income coming in, you're going to keep half, you're going to pay your loan back with half. Boom, done, right? You just had a better life because of that. The fourth thing you can do, lower taxes, right? You can lower taxes. So we set up the sacred account, we fund the sacred account, we take a loan against the sacred account. The money we've borrowed from the sacred account, we fund a tax planning strategy with it. You can fund your IRA from it. You can fund your 401k with it. I don't love those options unless you're doing self-directed, but you can do it. You can put money towards a charitable strategy. You can invest in solar panels and get huge deductions. If you're accredited, you can put money in oil and gas drilling. There's so many ways to reduce your tax bill. You can buy a rental property and take accelerated depreciation and cost segregation, which means you basically front end load all your write-offs and deductions on that property to lower your tax bill. You estimate what the savings are, divide that by 12 months, and that's what you're paying back to your sacred account every single month. Boom, I pay myself back now. What did I do? I secured an asset, I lowered my tax bill, I take the savings, and I'm paying myself back. Those are really the four main things you're going to do with the account. Okay, so I have people that I have talked to in recent times. Don't want to pick on you guys, but I'm going to pick on you guys. You have funded your sacred account and you've never borrowed against it. It is the equivalent in my mind. Know that when you're talking to me, this is exactly what I'm thinking. You bought a car and you parked it in your garage and that was it. You never drive the thing. I wonder why you have a car in the first place. Why would you have a car if you're not going to drive it? Not taking loans against your cash value, you are not playing the role of the banker. The banker's one job, right? Who's ever had this moment where you're in traffic, right? Things are moving along just fine. Cars are going ahead. All of a sudden, traffic jam. You're not on an intersection. There's no red light. There's no stop sign. There's no pedestrians. It was one guy who had one job. Just keep moving forward and don't hit anybody. And he couldn't do that one job. I get so frustrated. I'm like, dude, you had one job. You had one job and you couldn't do that. Why are you even on the road? Okay? It's going to sting a little bit. When you are the banker, you have one job. Take loans against your policy and use them to make more money than the cost of interest. That's it. That is it. You have one job. If you can't do that one job, you should not be doing the sacred account. You hear what I'm saying? You're not being a benevolent banker who is thinking for himself or herself, who's building a wealthier life now with their family and in the world around them. You're not doing that because you're leaving the money there. You're not even being a benevolent banker. You're just being someone who bought life insurance and put money into it. Okay, you're not benefiting anyone. You're not benefiting yourself. You're not benefiting your family. You're not benefiting your church. You're not benefiting anybody if you're just leaving your money in your cash value. You should take loans. You should take them as quickly as you can in as large portions as you can and make the smartest decisions possible. And then you pay the loans back. And you just repeat that over and over and over because when you own a sacred account, you are now in the banking business and that's what banks do. Okay, second thing I want to harp on here. Not paying your loans back. Okay? You do step number 5, you do all the stuff. Step number 4 is you need to pay the loan back. Right? I want you to think about if you walked into a bank and you applied for a loan, like, Jerry, you got good income, you got good credit. Now, we need you to agree. What are they going to have me do? We need you to agree that you're going to pay us back every month this much money. How many times do they give you the loan before you agree to pay them back that much money. Never. You have to pay them back or you don't get the money. See what I'm saying? Okay, so you are the same way. You're the banker. You need to make sure the payment comes back every single month. It's called being an honest banker. If you owned a gas station, you wouldn't let people run around stealing your gas and be like, oh, it's fine. If you owned a grocery store, you wouldn't go around stealing the food out of the grocery store yourself and being like, I'm the owner, so it's all free. No, it's not free. You're losing money. Okay, I will never forget when I was 17, I think, 17, 18, I worked at a pizza joint. And my boss at the pizza joint was one of the most anal people ever when it came to the employees getting free pizza or him getting free pizza. He didn't like it. He was like, hey, if you're going to get one, go ahead, you do one, and we're going to pick the portion sizes because we lose money when we give you free food. So we're going to limit that. Okay? When you don't pay your loans back, you are losing money as a banker. You need to make sure your loans get paid back. Okay, so if you are borrowing from your own bank and I talk to you and I find out you're not paying your loans back, my first thing that I'm thinking is you're stealing from your bank. You are a criminal towards your own organization. You would never do that to someone else's bank, but all of a sudden now that it's yours, it's okay. Guys, I can tell you stories about people who will go out of their way to not damage their credit score, to not have to default on a loan, to make sure their credit card gets paid, to make sure their car loan gets paid because it's someone else's bank and they know something bad will happen, right? They're going to get a ding. They're going to get a red mark on their credit report and it's going to drop their score, right? If you own the bank, you are making yourself poorer when you don't pay your loans back. If your credit score goes down because you didn't pay someone else's bank back, you're not poorer. You just aren't going to get good loans anymore. You are factually more poor when you fail to pay back your own banking system. That's the reality of the situation here, right? Pay your loans back. All right, good. Final step, open more locations. Okay, this is another one, and this one's my fault because I've not talked enough about it. When you open up a sacred account, you've got a certain amount of money that goes to what's called your base premium. That's the money that buys the whole life insurance death benefit. Okay, those are the shares. Those are the reason why you make dividend income. It's like when you buy a rental property and you get income, you're like, okay, good, the money's illiquid, I can't touch it. It's not mine to borrow or have, but it pays me every month. Okay, so you're gonna have typically like 40% to maybe 10% of the total money you're putting in every month going towards your base whole life insurance death benefit. Okay, now you're gonna have another chunk that goes to paid up additions. That's the money that goes directly into your cash value that you can start borrowing against immediately. So you're gonna have somewhere between 60 to maybe 90% of that money going into paid up additions, depending on how you design the policy. My team helps you figure all this stuff out when you set one up. However, when you start making profit on your banking system, or your income goes up because you're working and your business is growing or you're doing well at work, whatever it is, or you start saving more money because you paid off some debt and you've got this extra cash, you should open up another policy. You see, I used to think you put it in paid up additions. If you've got extra room, put it in the paid up additions and just put more money in unscheduled into your policy. Okay, that's not a bad thing. Like that is still a good, decent strategy. The problem is the paid up additions don't earn dividends. They don't grow quite as much. You're getting the guaranteed interest. They buy a fractional, little tiny bit amount of what's called reduced paid up additions, fractional amounts of death benefit. It does give you some growth, but not quite as much as if you were to put more money to a new policy that has more money going to base premium and paying you those dividends. So if I have a profitable business and it's running and it's hands off and I'm like, this thing just kicks off money every month or every year, right? I would open up another one. When I invest in real estate, I'm never like, I want to own one property. I want my dream is one house in West Virginia that pays me $700 a month. That's the whole goal here. No. I want 30, 40, 50, 600, as many properties as I can get. Okay? If my business is running well, I want more locations. If you observe any major bank, you will observe they have more than one location. So if you find yourself having extra money above and beyond what you're putting in for your premium contributions, that means you should be opening up another location. Otherwise, you're going to put it in PUAs on the current policy, the paid up additions. It's not going to grow quite as much. Or worse, you're going to leave it in an actual bank account with someone else's bank, which is literally supporting your competition. Or you're going to spend it, which now you lose the future value of the money forever. Or you're going to give it to Wall Street, which is also not building you the wealth, is building them the wealth. See what I'm saying? Guys, these are the basics of the sacred account. So if you're watching this, couple of things. Number one, you want to make sure you're doing all these steps. And if you're not doing all these steps, I want to help you. Reach out, say, hey, I don't think I'm doing all the steps right. I don't think I'm doing this correctly. I need some help. I will personally do a one-on-one call with you and help you get it sorted out. Okay. Number two, if you're doing this well, then you want to enhance the system. Grow your income, save more money, open more of these locations for your banking system, right? Number three, and finally, if you've not opened up a policy yet and you're sitting on the sideline, I want you to realize all of the stuff I've just described is already happening to your money. All of it. The only difference, you benefit from none of it because you're only the depositor. Okay, so if you were to change just one thing, which is the location you deposit your money, you would be opening up a world of becoming your own banker, and you would benefit from the banking quadrant. Okay, so that's all I've got for you this Finance Friday. This was a deep dive, a refresh on the sacred account concept, on the concept of becoming your own banker. Now, you see my book here, okay? You also see this guy. Real quick here, I need to tell you guys this. Teddy Roosevelt had a sacred account. There's a reason why I have Teddy Roosevelt up here. Teddy Roosevelt, I believe, the values and the character of that guy, amazing and incredible. But he had a sacred account with New York Life Insurance. He had the equivalent in today's dollars of $1 million in his sacred account. Teddy Roosevelt, in my opinion, is one of the greatest presidents we've ever had, right? So if Teddy did it, why aren't you doing it? This was back in like the 1900s too. Like we didn't have social media. Teddy found out about it and did it, right? Walt Disney did it. Ray Kroc did it. Joe Biden has 6 of them. Guys, if Joe Biden is even doing it, okay, I watched today on a video, the man said that the president of Ukraine was Vladimir Putin. He called his vice president Donald Trump. If this individual has 6 of them and you don't, I'm just going to leave it at that. Like, we're not going to talk more about this. I'm going to let you assume what I think about you right now and just let that sit for a minute, okay? Otherwise, guys, that's all I got for you tonight. Grab my book if you haven't, by the way. This is going to give you a lot of training and education. You can get a free copy if you go to jerryfetta.com/B2F promo. You can also click the link in the description. This has been Finance Friday. I'll see you next time. Hey, this is Jerry Fetta here. I want to thank you for watching my video, watching my content. I hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to learn more about the blueprint to financial freedom and how you can achieve passive income that exceeds your savings, your expenses, your taxes, your generosity, and build wealth like the top 1%, I want to encourage you, grab a copy of my book, The Blueprint to Financial Freedom. You can go to jerryfetta.com/B2F promo, or you can click the link in the description of the video here. The copy is free. You cover your shipping. We'll send the book out to you, and we'll send you an email with a bunch of great bonus material also for free. Get the book, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you on my next content.